Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us as we kick off our 1995 season for this year. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and as has become traditional, we kick off the year with our fourth annual Chanuary. As always, it's not just me talking about all things Jackie Chan, as alongside me, we have a very special guest in the form of noted film reviewer, author, novelist, and one of the leading voices in action cinema today, the man you probably know as Outlaw Vern. Welcome to the show, Vern.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So before we get into the film, I usually give the listeners some stats about the film and the films released. So the film we're talking about today is Rumble in the Bronx, which was released on the 21st of January 1995 in Hong Kong, but would not come out in the US or in Australia or here in New Zealand until 1996. And it was not released in the UK, where I was at the time, until 1997. It was directed by Stanley Tong, who also directed the likes of Police Story 3 Super Cop and Police Story 4 First Strike. It was written by Edward Tang and Phi Ma, who also co wrote Mr. Nice Guy and Super Cop. And Tang was also a credited writer on many Jackie Chan films, including Project A1 and 2, Armor of God 1 and 2, and Police Story 1 and 2, amongst some others. Critically, it is currently sitting on 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 55 reviews, 61 on Metacritic, based on 23 reviews. It has a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb and a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Finally, box office wise, it made $76 million of a budget that's estimated to be between $7.5 million and $13 million, making it quite the big hit. So, Vern, when did you first see Rumble in the Bronx, and can you remember your first impressions of it, what you thought of it back in the day?
Yeah, I saw it in 1996 probably the day it came out in theaters in the US. Uh, it was a time when I don't know if it was exactly the same in New Zealand, but in the US, kind of the early 90s to mid 90s was kind of the time when a lot of people like me were discovering Hong Kong cinema and getting really excited about it. You know, I had seen the John Woo movies a few years earlier and started watching Jet Li and Michelle Yeoh, like whatever we could find between like the few videos that you could find in the video store. And then if you knew some guy that had laser discs that would loan you a tape or whatever, you know, or a bootleg.
Yeah.
So we were all kind of scrambling to learn about this stuff. And so Jackie Chan, I can't remember how many of his movies I had seen at this point. I think I had seen a couple at least, but he was like this exciting, uh, legendary figure that we were kind of just like really getting excited about. And then when Rumble in the Bronx came out, that was the first time that we got to see him in the theater and have like an audience together celebrating him together instead of just being this kind of thing that you and your nerdy friends knew about. So yeah, I remember it being really exciting to see in the theater with my friends and with everyone else. And even though it was dubbed and not like his very best movie or anything, I think it's like a really fun movie, and it was a great kind of moment in our cinematic evolution, I think.
Yeah, it seems like it. I feel like I almost missed out, missed out like seeing it in the cinema and like that whole kind of thing of like that kind of early 90s when Hong Kong cinema was starting to become bigger, because like this was kind of my introduction to Jackie Chan. I probably would have got this on video when it came out on video in the UK, probably in like 1998. So when I'd be probably about 13, I think. Yeah, I'd be about 13. Um yeah, so this was really the introduction for me, and then like that uh I love Hong Kong cinema grew out of this movie really, and particularly Jackie Chan. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not my if I look at all the Hong Kong stuff that I love and all the martial arts movies I love and everything, Jackie Chan isn't really like at the top for me, but he's still such a beloved figure just because partly because of that, because he introduced so many of us to this, he was one of the things that introduced us to this world that was felt really new to us at the time.
And so you're saying like so where um that's an interesting thing. So where would Jackie kind of rank for you? Kind of who were the figures would you say that you would place above him in your kind of pantheon of kind of martial art Hong Kong martial arts cinema?
Uh, well, maybe I misstated that a little. It's not necessarily that he, as a star or director or whatever, would rank lower, but just like my very favorite martial arts movies are generally kind of more story driven and more kind of have more thematic material behind them and kind of are more poetic in a way, like like 36 Chambers of Shaolin or like Tai Chi Master and movies that I kind of like see all this meaning in. And then Jackie is
Mm,
different in a totally, it's completely legitimate, but his style is often more just stringing together the different fights and stunts that he comes up with, which is great and which is why this is so entertaining. But it's just like, uh, he's definitely up there. He's one of the most, he's on the Mount Rushmore, but his movies aren't my number one favorite.
yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. And yeah, I mean, you make a good point because I mean that is exactly maybe even more so than some of his movies. That is exactly what this movie is. Because I guess on a certain level, this is not a good movie. Um, in terms of like the dubbing's quite bad, some of the acting is pretty ropey, the plot is wafer thin, but also at the same time, it's an excellent movie.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
all the things that you just mentioned are part of what make it so fun too. Like it wouldn't be improved by being less ridiculous.
No, no, you're absolutely right. In fact, it might if they're if it became more serious or if they tried to inject like a kind of more heft into a subplot or whatever, it might actually throw things off. It might actually upset things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know this is like we'll probably talk about the whole movie, but and I know this is skipping ahead, but in terms of upsetting things, the one thing that has always stood out in my head with this movie is the scene in the alley, the kind of
The
bottle scene,
bottles. Yeah,
the bottle scene.
yeah, I thought you would say that. I agree.
Yeah, right. Okay, okay. So like it's always stood out to me. I always think it's so tonally different. It's so kind of so much more mean-spirited and so much harsher than the rest of the movie that I've it's never sat comfortably with me.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I like that scene, but I otherwise think of it as a movie that you can recommend to kids.
Yeah.
I mean, you still could, I think, but like then when you get to that scene, you're kind of going like, "Oh, this is pretty harsh," you know? Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I wonder, I mean, I'm sure those were fake bottles that they were just throwing at him, but it still looks dangerous.
Yeah, I'm sure they're kind of yeah, just kind of very kind of breakaway sugar glass or whatever. But yeah, no, it still looks pretty. Yeah, it's pretty harsh.
And it's so mean. And then the fact that he forgives, is her name Nancy? He forgives her
Nancy.
for setting him up for that. Like that was pretty bad that she set him up to get bottles thrown at him. But
Yeah,
if I
because
remember right, am I remembering that right? Doesn't she kind of lure
yeah,
him to there?
yeah. So like so the way it's set up is that the Nancy character. it looks like she's being raped in an alley, but it's not. She's not actually being. She's not
Yeah.
actually being raped. It's just a kind of ploy to get Jackie's character into the alley because they know he's such a hero that he would absolutely come to save the day. So and then that's where he gets trapped that way. So yes, it is Nancy who kind of lures him into the alley. And like you say, um, if this was like trying to be like a cleverer movie or like a deeper movie, it could really throw it off because, like you say, part of the fun is that it's so ridiculous in the way that he forgives her, but it's also so ridiculous that like after like one heart tugging speech from her younger brother, she just like immediately becomes a good person.
Yeah. Yeah, I like her. Anytime there's like a cool lady with like a motorcycle and a cool helmet and little face paint in part of it when she's in the motorcycle race, you're like, oh, okay, that's gonna be a cool character. I I enjoy that he becomes friends with her and her little brother and pushes him around in his wheelchair and stuff.
Yeah, no, no, so am I, and she is a pretty cool character, and like she's pretty fun. I mean, she's pretty fun when she's the villain, and she's pretty fun when she like does her backflip into being just the kind of the good sister and just a good person. Although
Yeah.
that transition is a bit weird because you think initially in the early part of the film that there's going to be some romantic intrigue with the Elaine character,
Oh yeah.
who becomes the owner of the supermarket, and there's this kind of romantic comedy kind of meet cute, when he's like kind of posing in the two-way mirror and stuff like that, and he doesn't realize. And but then that's just immediately thrown out when the Nancy character flips to being good.
Yeah. Well, maybe he blows it with her when he gets the entire store destroyed. Uh,
I I guess yes, the first time he gets the entire store destroyed by the biker gang, and I guess like definitely by the second time that's
Yeah,
that's
that
done.
yeah. I've always enjoyed how he helps with they're just kind of doing a minor shoplifting thing and he beats them all up and knocks over a whole bunch of racks and like does all this damage and everyone's all happy. Everyone at the store is all happy that he helped out, but it seems like he lost them a lot more money than they would have lost from the shoplifting.
That that's true because like there's one guy who steals like a couple of candy bars, and then there's another guy who's got like kind of a bag full of candy bars. But like he knocks over several stands, and like it's one of those classic things where they've got like a pyramid of like Coke cans which they like push over, and like
Yeah.
yeah, you do think that the losses would be much more in that situation.
I don't know why it's such a great template for a fight scene that they always, so many action movies that I love have the scene where some guys come into either like a convenience store or a liquor store or a grocery store and cause trouble, and then us, the hero just is usually it just happens to be there at the time and beats him up or whatever, you know. There's so many movies that do that, and it's always fun, I think.
I think it's fun to see like these kind of henchmen like being thrown into like supermarket shelves or like put in freezers and stuff like that. I don't know,
Yeah,
and I guess like the one that I often go back to in terms of like convenience stores fights is like that completely unnecessary but absolutely necessary fight scene right at the start of Hard to Kill.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I'm glad you say that because when people say that it doesn't belong in there because it's not part of the plot, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's why it's great.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It is absolutely not part of the plot and doesn't need to be there in terms of its plot essentials. But it's such a fun way to open the film. Like, why would you open the film any other way?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
It establishes the kind of adventures that he has just going home from work and stuff.
that's true. You just never know like what he's going into walking into. Like, yeah, the man just wants to go home to watch the Oscars, but
Exactly. But in the case of Rumble in the Bronx, it's kind of establishing, instead of being a random thing, it's like
yeah,
he's kind of this saintly figure because he comes to help. He comes to go to his uncle's wedding, and then he's like, I'm gonna stay and help with the grocery store. So he's just like a good nephew that's being nice. And then also he knows how to fight, so he helps out with that.
yeah,
I
and
guess in the Hong Kong version they say that he's a cop, but I don't think they say that in the
no, they never established that. I guess he kind of acts like a cop, but like, they never established that in the
but yeah,
the
but I don't think it's needed. They just
no,
show him practicing on the kung fu dummy, and that's all I need to see. If even that, but
yeah.
I like establishing that he has martial arts skills at the beginning, even though it's not needed.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess like when he's beating up the Wing Chun dummy, that kind of you're like, oh right. I mean, I guess if you're familiar with Jackie Chan, you know that anyway. But like, yeah, I guess that's like a kind of a kind of fun thing. Um, so I take it because I don't know if I don't know if it's available anywhere streaming. I take it like me, you watched the 90-minute international version and not the 106-minute Hong Kong version, which I couldn't find anywhere, so I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Yeah, I think I have seen that before. There's a lot of DVD versions that are
Mm,
out. But yeah, the most recently I went back to the American dubbed version. It's just I don't know that it's a better version, but it's just kind of the one that I love because of what we were talking about before, about just kind of that nostalgia for when I first saw it and everything.
yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I also also like you say about not establishing things. I like that like so he goes to see his uncle, and it's his uncle Bill, and his uncle Bill is played by the same actor who plays his uncle Bill in Police Story, but it's not Uncle
Yeah.
Bill from Police Story.
Yeah, that's always confused me too. Like I yeah, I think there was a time when I was like, is this supposed to be related to the Police Story series? But I guess it doesn't really matter either way.
I guess not. I mean, it's not essential to the plot because Uncle Bill's not in the film for very long. He's just kind of in it at the start. He sells his supermarket, and then he goes off on his honeymoon, and then that's really it for old Uncle Bill. Uh,
Yeah, they should have a spin-off movie about his honeymoon and he gets into some rumbles.
yeah, absolutely. And I would say as well, on the mini Uncle Bill plot that happens at the start of the movie, often when we're talking about these kind of 90s action films, often we have to talk about kind of maybe the problematic elements of the film. But I don't feel like this film generally has any real problematic elements. But there is one bit of kind of awkward racial humor that we kind of gloss over pretty quickly and we move on from. So it's kind of fine, but it is kind of weird. Like when Jackie acts like surprised that Uncle Bill is marrying a black woman. I was just kind of like it's kind of like a weird gag, but like I guess that they move on from it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's you don't really know how to feel about it because it definitely feels like you're supposed to laugh like, isn't this crazy? Like, yeah, that's definitely seems to be the intent. But then at the same time, he has that line about, doesn't he say like, he's like, what can I say? Welcome to America, or something like that. And it's like, and then it just kind of moves on, and it is
Yeah,
kind of like, yeah, like,
yeah. And I think that line, the "Welcome to America" line, kind of releases the tension of that moment, and you're kind of like, okay, right, okay, we're everybody's cool with this, we're all cool, and like we'll move on with the rest of the movie.
yeah, I agree. It's like kind of uncomfortable, but then I kind of go, well, okay, I'll allow it. It's kind of how I end up feeling. But yeah, there's definitely that element in a lot of Chinese movies, and
That's true.
and any kind of movie, really. But
Any kind of movie, and yeah, oh, and overall, on that level, I think this is pretty. Yeah, I think you can recommend this to the most people, and people. There's nothing in it to really offend people. I mean, there's other Jackie Chan movies, particularly Jackie Chan movies that happen to be directed by Sammo Hung, that have at least one or two leering sexist moments that you're like, eh.
Yeah, but here the women either run a grocery store or they drive a motorcycle. So they're strong women.
That's true. That's true. I also love that, like, when Nancy flips from being a bad girl to a good girl, that her costuming completely changes as well.
That's true.
She has much more kind of demure, kind of like flowery kind of costuming. Which is yeah, I thought that was funny. And also talking about the costuming, I guess the motorbike cycle gang that she is kind of a part of, um, like I've always been entertained by them because it's very much in a kind of Warriors, Class of Nukem High, Mad Max kind of vein of like cartoonish gangs. And I don't know, there's something about that type of gang that I just love. I know it's like completely separate from reality, but I just find it very fun. I don't know what were your thoughts kind of on the gang.
Yeah, yeah, actually I was going to bring that up too, that it's honestly probably my favorite thing about the movie is just the I wish they had a name though. I don't think they have a name. But yeah, I love how the gang is like so exaggerated and it's like I mean, I know they're probably not trying to make a realistic
No.
movie, but it feels like there's this kind of I mean, a realistic depiction of what tough guys are like in the US at the time. But like there's kind of this filter between their Hong Kong filmmakers and then they're filming in Canada and they're pretending like this is their idea of how to make a movie gang from New York. And they're like wearing zebra striped shirts and like Zubaz pants. And then there's some guys with mohawks. And then there's one guy that has like a velvet hat with like peace signs all over it and stuff and round sunglasses. And it's just such a funny. Oh, and there's a woman wearing lingerie playing pool in their hideout. And then yeah, I think there's kind of a Warriors feeling to that when we first meet them and they're having the motorcycle race over parked cars, and
Yeah.
then there's one of them is driving they're driving like is it like a golf cart or something that's covered in Christmas lights, and
Yes, it is. Yeah, 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 yeah.
there's a good variety of vehicles in this movie, which I appreciate. Um, but yeah, I love how they have that warehouse that is sort of their lair where they have like pool tables, pinball machines, uh, but also like refrigerators and things. And then they listen to ministry and and there's a lot of like traffic signs and things hanging up around as decoration. It kind of reminds me of in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie how the all the kids have their little fort where they play video games and ride skateboards and stuff. It's
Oh
kind of
yeah. No, it is quite similar to that for sure. For
it's
sure.
kind of like that. And then if you follow the character of Nancy, like she's part of that group, but then she has her own. I don't know if they're supposed to live there or not. I think maybe some of them live there, but then she has her own apartment and she's kind of like has this other life where she's trying to be responsible and take care of her brother and everything. But her apartment also is decorated in this way that's supposed to represent kind of her artistic expression or something where everything is kind of um, there's like collages on the wall and different uh, paint. The different sections of the wall are painted in different colors in kind of like a cool way. But it's like I like how it was all of this was kind of a ridiculous portrayal of a subculture at the time, but now it's even better because now it's also a 90s time capsule. Even though things weren't really like that then, it still represents this kind of 90s aesthetic. So like that's part of what I really love about it, watching it now.
Yeah. No, I agree. Although I would say that like it's kind of almost it is a very 90s aesthetic, but like, with like the Zubas and all that, it feels almost slightly earlier. It feels almost like a slightly earlier 90s aesthetic than the mid
Yeah,
90s. More kind of, it feels like more like 92 than 95, if you know what I mean.
yeah, definitely. I agree.
So, which I don't know, maybe like like the Hong Kong cinema is slightly behind, but like you say, it is interesting that it's being kind of filtered through all these different lenses. So, it's like a Hong Kong film filmed in Vancouver, pretending to be New York, and I don't know, like, is that like more of a hurdle for you, like for somebody, I grew up in Scotland, so what do I know about New York other than the famous landmarks? So is the fact that it's like in Vancouver and you can see mountains in the background and things like that, I know that seems to have been more of a hurdle for some American audiences. Does that bother you at all, or you just don't care?
No, no, it never bothered me. I always thought it was funny. But I've never actually been to New York. I just my idea from it of it is from movies also, but
Oh,
it doesn't feel like my impression of what New York is. And so, but it's, that makes it that's part of the fun of kind of how silly the movie is, I think. I have been to Vancouver before, and I had a friend that went to animation school up there like years after this, and I visited her, and she pointed me to the parking garage that she said was the one that he jumps off onto the balcony. And so that seemed like a holy sight at the time. Be like, oh
oh,
my God.
that's cool. I would have been, I would have been very impressed by that as well. And I guess it makes more. I guess it makes sense that you've been to Vancouver, but not New York, because as I understand, Vancouver is only like 2 or 3 hours away, whereas New York's like the other side of the
Yeah,
country.
exactly.
So,
I definitely
yeah.
need to go there though. Maybe, yeah, maybe my ideas of Rumble in the Bronx will change after I go there. Maybe I'll find that it's more realistic than I realized.
Who knows? Maybe they picked the most New Yorky bits of Vancouver. Um, but apparently it was like, from what I read, it was a real pain that they had to like do this kind of fake graffiti each day to try and make it what they think that like a kind of New York a kind of ghetto looks like, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
eh,
I always laugh at that in you see it a lot in American movies too, of just low budget movies that when the graffiti is obviously not real graffiti, and just like saying really ridiculous things and not like they didn't really have an idea of they couldn't just hire a real graffiti artist. They had to have someone on the set crew or something just go, I don't know, anarchy sign and you know, I don't know. It's always funny.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess like I find that stuff fun, and I guess it's like, kind of going back to the gang. It's like I also find it fun when they're trying to portray things in movies that they just don't know anything about the subculture. So I love kind of the kind of like, particularly in 80s movies, where you get these kind of fake movie punks, and it's all these filmmakers who clearly have never listened to a punk band, never been to a punk show, but have this idea in their head of what a punk is and what they look like.
Yeah, exactly. And a punk definitely rides a motorcycle and mugs people in alleys and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course they would.
Throws
Um,
bottles at people.
yeah, yeah. It is interesting, like with the motorcycle kind of race thing. Like, so it looks like, yeah, like you say, they don't have a name. They just, the leader of the gang is Tony, so we'll just call them Tony's gang. Um, and Tony's gang is, they have like a rival gang that they have this motorcycle race with, you know, a la Fast and Furious, but with motorcycles. And but they just, that rival gang never appear again. They just like
Yeah.
they win the race and they're like, yeah, we're riding out the movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I always think it's funny in Hong Kong movies where they have the white guys. There's something about them where like, like they're they're impressive people because they're usually martial artists that can do the fight scenes and everything. But there's something about them where they just don't have the same presence that an American, like that a Hollywood movie would have for like a dude like that. So they always seem kind of dorky, you know, not always, but a lot of times they seem kind of dorky. And I feel like Tony qualifies for that, where he's just like this dude with this trench coat riding a motorcycle, but he just kind of looks like a nerd. Um, but he can fight in some of the scenes and everything. So it's an interesting type of character, I think. The white bad guys.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And he like you say, because like the character comes off as like quite dorky, you almost imagine that like Jackie's character when they do fight will just destroy him. But like when they actually have the fight on top of the pool table, it's like, oh no,
Yeah.
this actually guy's actually got some moves. And then I was looking the guy up and I was like, oh, he's like a he sadly died very young, but on a accident on the Crow TV show. Um, eh,
Oh
but
no.
yeah, no. I was looking him up on IMDb, and yeah, he passed away. There was some sort of explosion on the Crow TV show, which I think is called Crow Stairway to Heaven, and yeah, no, he got injured, and then he died from his injuries. Unfortunately, he was only kind of, I think he was like 44 or something. Like it
Oh,
was
that's really sad.
yes, but yeah. So he was when he was still alive a stunt guy. Like he didn't act all that much. But so no, he actually has some moves when they actually get to fighting. Um,
Yeah, and I should say it's not his. I mean, I'm sure he didn't get to pick out his jacket and gloves
oh,
and
I'm
everything.
sure. No, I'm pretty
It's not
sure.
his fault that he looks like that. But that's part of the fun is like, yeah, the character thinks he looks cool wearing that stuff, and so that makes it funny.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when we started the conversation, we were talking about some of the kind of weaker elements of the film in terms of plot and some of the acting and stuff like that. But I think also that often works in its favor because the guy who plays who we assume is kind of like second in command, this Angelo character, who is the one who really wants to kill Jackie's character, who's played by another stunt guy called Gavin Cross. His performance isn't good, but it's so off the chain insane that I love his performance.
Yeah, I think he's pretty good. He's like, yeah, he seems more like a character actor kind of crazy dude guy than I wouldn't have guessed he was a stuntman actually.
He does have way more acting credits than the other like leader of the gang. Like he does actually have quite a lot of acting credits. So like I think he's a mixture of like actor and stunt guy. He's done a mixture of things. Um
Yeah, he's a really good. I like how he's the hateable guy where even the other guys in the gang find him annoying, I think. Like they when they're throwing the bottles, they get mad at him and they all leave because he pulls out a gun or something. And and
yeah,
then and he's the one that gets them in trouble with the mob by stealing the diamonds.
yes, that's right. So like they do the thing. Um, he initially pulls out a gun just to kill Jackie's character, and then they're like, "No, we're going to do this bottle thing instead," and like because we don't want to kill him, we just want to badly wound him apparently. Um, and then they do that thing where that they often do in these movies to prove how evil this character is, that they have him like slap a woman, but interestingly, the gang, despite their evilness, don't like enjoy this.
That's
They
right,
they
yeah.
they all turn on them and like too far, dude, too far, and they all walk away from him. Like,
Yeah, maybe,
yeah.
yeah, now that I think about it, maybe that's I never really thought about it. That's pretty smart because then it's easier for us to accept when they kind of turn over to Jackie's side later on.
That is true. Yeah. So the like But even that, I mean, it is amazing. Like Jackie's turnaround of like he is truly a saintly character in this movie, because there's a bit in the movie where as you mentioned, the jump from the car park to the fire escape, which is just an insane stunt. Like the lead up to that is like this massive chase where the bike gang are chasing him up through the levels of this multi-story car park, And I mean, they legitimately try to murder him. I mean, they push a truck off the top of a multi-story car park. Um,
Yeah.
you know, like he is an amazingly forgiving man. This gang have tried to murder him at least twice, and
Uh, yeah.
he still turns around and is like, yeah, no, hopefully one of these days we'll be sitting drinking tea together.
Yeah, I love that scene. I wanted to mention two things. Like number one, like just like little things, like just the part where, the part where he runs up the fence. It's like he
Yep.
he runs up the corner between a fence and a wall and
Hmm.
just kind of nimbly runs up and hops over the fence. It's just like those little things that he does like that are some of my favorite things in his movies where I'm just like, it just looks incredible. And then also I love the truck part because the guy is wearing the I don't understand why the guy has a truck filled with rubber balls in the back, and he's wearing like an American flag hat and a tie-dyed shirt. The guy that was driving the truck.
The guy who was driving the car, and he seems like when he turns around and sees Jackie, and he's kind of like, "What are you doing in my car?" And he's like the worst the American stereotype. He looks like he's driving to a MAGA rally right now. Like that's like, um,
Well, he's just an ordinary rubber ball salesman like you would see in New York at any time. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
That's what I thought. I've always been aware that like New York's very famous for the rubber ball salesman. Um,
Yeah,
it's an odd thing.
yeah, obviously the important thing is they wanted to dump a truck off a building and have it spill rubber balls everywhere. So
They're like, how do we get this to this? I have to say,
it's really cool.
yeah,
They
it
were
is
right.
really cool. It works. It works. I mean,
Yeah.
as ridiculous as it is, it's a real fun scene. There was also like throughout the movie, I think that stunt where he jumps from the car park to the fire escape is insane, and I'm surprised he didn't hurt himself doing that. He hurt himself doing something else, but
Yeah.
he didn't hurt himself doing that, which is really surprising. Apparently, he got it in the first take, and also some of the other things that I just think look really painful. Like there's another bit in that whole chase sequence where um he's getting chased by like some of the motorbike guys, and he puts like the kind of toll down, and like just one guy just gets completely wiped out by that and just nearly gets
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good and
decapitated.
yeah, and right before that he just grabs the guy by the back of the coat and pulls him off of a motorcycle, which is I like that.
Yeah,
And there's also I think it's that same scene where he runs up the car and falls into the top of the car and the motorcycle drives over between his legs.
oh
Like
yeah,
his
but
legs.
yes, that's right. That's right. He kind of drops in like kind of the sunscreen at the top of the car, and yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many like little bits in this movie that, or that's the Jackie Chan thing, but that's just going through, you just remember all these, oh, like, what about that part with the refrigerator or whatever, there's just a million of those things. And one part in that scene that's really funny that's not a stunt is when I think it's Angela that moons him and then he gets mad and rips an antenna off of a car and spanks his naked ass with it.
That is really funny. I love it. I love that as well. Where he's just fed up of running away. He's like, I've had enough of this running away. I'm gonna hit back. I don't care how many guns they have or how many of them they are. Um, yeah. I mean, it is interesting though. Like I know that it's kind of to convince of their later face turn, but I mean, they do have guns. They have quite a few guns, and they until very late on, they never actually think about shooting Jackie. They're always just like, no, we're going to try and murder him in like creative ways, like pushing him off this truck and stuff like that. It's yeah. They're a bit nervous about using it, and maybe they don't know how to use them. Maybe that's the whole thing. Like they're kind of incompetent on that way.
That might be it. Yeah. I think my favorite sequence in the whole movie is when he comes to their lair and fights them because it's just the classic like Jackie Chan fight team choreography of just like they look through the place and find all the props that they can use and figure out all the cool gimmicks that they can come up with.
Yeah,
And
I no, I absolutely agree. I love when they have fights like that in Jackie Chan movies, and they really play with the environment as much as possible. And you realize that the exact reason why they have all these pinball machines and fridges and stuff like that is so that they can play with all that. And then at the end of the fight, and I mean, I don't know. At the end of the fight, Jackie Chan starts fighting them off with a ski, and I was like, "Who of the gang is skiing? Like, why did he have these skis?"
that's a good point. And then later he could have used it because he water skis without skis.
That is true. That like he should have saved those skis from the layer. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. You're absolutely right. Um,
But yeah, that's a great fight. And then also the scene is funny because I like how I think there's two different times when he wags his finger and lectures them. He says, "You are all garbage" at the beginning. And then he says something about, I think I wrote it down. "Don't you know you are the scum of society?" He says later.
which seems to be the silver bullet line that makes them change their ways. Like
Yeah.
that that and then when he says like, hopefully one day we'll not be fighting, hopefully one day we'll all be drinking tea together, and he says that in Cantonese, and Nancy has to translate that to the guy, and Tony is so touched by that. he goes
Yeah.
he goes did he really say that? And like
Yeah. Yeah, I
um,
love that. I'm
uh,
with you. I love whenever in a kind of more silly movie when a bad guy just becomes a good guy. Like that's the thing I love in the Phantom, the Billy Zane movie. There's
yeah.
like there's a great part where Christy Swanson says something to Catherine Zeta-Jones about like, why can't you just be nice or something like that? And then you see her having this look of recognition, and then she just becomes nice after that. But I guess Jackie does a lot more work to have to
He does he
turn him
does
over.
he does do a lot more. He does do a lot more work. Although I do like in this kind of type of movie, I do love that as well. Like the one I always think of is like when it dawns on Zangief in Street Fighter that they're the bad guys, and then he's like, and then he just gives that up, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm with you guys now. Uh,
That's the best. It's just kind of a nice, optimistic way to see humanity, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just needs some. These people just need. They've never had any kind words, and they just need some kind words, and then they'll just realize that like they've been on the wrong path all these years, and now they're going to make up for it and be on a better path. Yeah.
Except maybe Angelo. I don't know if Angelo can be
No,
redeemed.
I think Angelo. I think it's suggested that like of the gang, Angelo is irredeemable, but the rest of the gang are redeemable. That seems to be the general vibe that the movie is going for. Um, yeah. So it it's this film is an interestingly structured film because like what we've not mentioned yet is like you might think that this whole movie is Jackie Chan versus a biker gang who he eventually turns good, but it's not because there's also other gangsters who really don't come into the movie until about the halfway point of the film where we see like what seems at the time a completely unrelated illegal diamond sale go down, which then goes bad, and then it injects these other gangsters, these much worse, obviously completely irredeemable gangsters, um, into the movie. Like I don't know if you can remember like first seeing the movie, like or like your reaction to this, or like just were you surprised? And also like rewatching the movie for some reason I I've seen this movie like two or three times before most recent rewatch, and I always vividly remember the biker gang. And each time, I always go like, when the other gangsters come in, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, they're here too.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really remember how I reacted at the time, but I'm the same way when I think about the movie, I think about the guy in the tiger striped shirt and stuff, and I don't as much remember those guys, but I like how it's kind of like the hierarchy of the organized crime in the Bronx, Canada, uh, that like our biker guys, like their crimes are like shoplifting, harassment, illegal motorcycle races, maybe something to do with refrigerators, but they're like the working class
Yeah,
punk criminal guys. And then this mob run by a guy named White Tiger, which is a great villain name. Um, like he's shown on a golf course using a cell phone, which not everyone, you had to be rich at the time to have. And and then all his guys all wear suits and ties, and they have machine guns, and they drive around in limos and stuff. So there's like a whole class thing going on there. But I like how it's completely coincidental that Angelo happens to see them get in a car crash, and he sees the diamonds and takes them. And then it's also coincidental that he runs into Jackie with Nancy's little brother, and he hides the diamonds in his wheelchair.
yes, like I like how, yeah, that kind of adds up, and it just like, I guess we just have to get there. We have to get the Jackie connected to the other gangsters somehow, and then so it's just one of those kind of plot magic things of like, yeah, we're just
Yeah.
we have to connect these dots. How do we connect these dots? And this is how we're going to do it. Um, I love how you mentioned that, like, so this is like a kind of um this gang, like you say, they all wear kind of black suits, white shirts, those kind of those kind of little black ties, thin black ties, and stuff like that. Very Reservoir Dogs, and like you say, I love the fact that the head of this kind of very white, very upper class organization is called White Tiger, the most the most Hong Kong martial art villain name for
Yeah, that's a good
for,
point. Like
for
that's
a
what you would
New
call,
York guy.
yeah, that's what you would call the one white bad guy in a movie, but in this case, he's not the only one.
Yeah, because it makes more sense that the white villain is called White Tiger in like if he's in like Hong Kong, but like he's not. He doesn't know he's a Hong Kong movie villain. So why
It's
would he
true.
call himself that? But anyway, I like that he's called that.
Yeah, me too. I think also once you've accepted that this is not only about the motorcycle gang, but also about this mob, then you still wouldn't guess that it's going to turn into a big thing about a hovercraft driving through the city.
No, your brain would not make that leap whatsoever. No, absolutely not. So this movie does certainly keep you on your toes, I have to say.
And that's part of what I like, that there's such a variety of action in it, where my favorite is the fighting,
Hmm.
but then the vehicle stuff is also cool. And the stunts, like obviously the jump that we talked about is incredible. And there's there's stunts with motorcycles, cars, the truck falling off the building. And then we're like, why don't we throw in a hovercraft? And and the hovercraft driving through, it's like you get all kinds of flavors.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do like that you get all these different things, and like hovercrafts, it's very rare that a hovercraft appears in an action movie or any movie. So like yeah, it's certainly a unique selling point. I guess like, yeah, I mean, before we get into like kind of the hovercraft finale and all the madness of that we get in that sequence. And I think like in that final sequence there's quite a few things to kind of talk about before we get to that. Um, I was going to say that like one of my favorite things in terms of like plot magic is when people do things in a time in an allotment of time that they couldn't possibly have done it. Like like the classic thing of like slasher movies where somebody witnesses a murder, runs downstairs to tell their friends that they've witnessed a murder, and then they get back upstairs, and in that time, the slasher villain has both moved the corpse somewhere else and cleaned the room, and it looks like nothing has happened. Things like that, love it. Um, and that has kind of what happens with the supermarket when the supermarket's destroyed, completely destroyed, where
Oh yeah.
they go upstairs, they have a 5 minute conversation, and at the time of that 5 minute conversation, they've managed to join up like dozens of chains from the back of a truck into various parts of the supermarket and then completely demolish it. And it's completely impossible that they could have done it in that time, but it entertains me every time I watch this movie.
So how did they so did they was the entire facade of the store was built for the movie and then they inked it
I
down? I
think
guess that
so.
must be what it is.
I think so. I think it was like a completely built for the film kind of set. Um,
Yeah, I love that joke of how it's kind of like a doll's house with the split, like you can see the different levels, and isn't she on the toilet? I forget.
She is on the like yes, because there is a fun like basically Jackie's character is talking about the stolen diamonds and showing her the stolen diamonds and she's like, "Oh, I'll take a couple. Um uh I'll just take a couple. They won't notice." And he's like, "They will notice, just leave them." And then she kind of smuggles a couple in her pocket, and he like she says, "I need to go to the loo." And then he comes out with the line, "You don't need to take diamonds to the loo," which I don't know why that a line kind of amused me, but like I thought that was quite funny. So yes, and then they have a gag about she's sitting on the loo when the facade is torn down, and like Jackie's kind of like, cover yourself, like I can see you, you're on the loo. And she's like, everybody can see me, I don't care anymore, like my life is ruined. I've just, spent all my savings, buying the supermarket, what am I going to do now? But she, like many of the characters in this movie, she also is quick to forgive, and by the end of the movie, like 10 minutes later, she's already forgiven Jackie, and she's having a whale of a time in the hovercraft.
Yeah, that's right. I was trying to remember, like, does she know that he's now hanging out with the people that destroyed her store? I don't know. I guess it's I guess it's extenuating circumstances with the diamonds and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Um. Oh yeah. Talking about Jackie hanging out, there's a real weird moment where we've not talked a lot about the little brother Danny, who's like wheelchair bound, that Jackie initially becomes friendly with. Um. There's a real weird moment where basically Danny tries to fix what is Jackie's character Kung up with his sister, and
That's right.
he says the line she's 21 and real beautiful, and you're like, that's real creepy for a younger brother. That's an odd moment, don't you think?
Yeah, he's a funny character. He kind of like with that high pitched voice, he in the dubbed version, he kind of reminds me of like the kids in Gamera movies and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Um,
And that's another example of him being saintly, that he's like he's taking care of a disabled kid that he just randomly met because he doesn't have parents around.
that's true. Um, and again, one of those movie magic things. He Jackie gives him a Game Gear, a Sega Game Gear that doesn't have a game cartridge, but he's still playing it. So like either he's imagining there's a game, or it works via movie magic, and somehow Game Gears in this movie universe can work without a game cartridge. Um, but like this movie is quite ruthless at times because there is that moment where the gangsters catch up, the other gangsters, the upper class gangsters catch up with Danny and Jackie, and one of the gangsters is just, I mean, this kid is like, I don't know, he's like 12 years old and he's wheelchair bound, and like this ponytailed, bemuscled kind of henchman is just throwing about this kid in quite a vicious fashion, you know? And again, it's like one of those moments where the movie goes harder than you might think it would. Because like you say, for the most part, it's quite kid friendly.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are jerks.
Yeah, those guys are real jerks. But I really like, I do like that scene, where like Jackie like punches the guy and it does nothing to him, and then Danny throws him a football helmet and he cracks him with a football helmet, and it doesn't do much to him, but it does hurt him. And then Danny throws him a massive wrench, and then that's when the guy taps out and is like, "No, don't do it." That was quite a good gag.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess we've gone through quite a few of the action sequences, and I think as we've mentioned, the film, like many other Jackie films, kind of are to do with their action sequences. Basically, if you don't enjoy martial arts, if you don't enjoy car chases, if you're not like super into action for action's sake, then this is not the movie for you. You know, if you are looking for like stronger characters or more plot intrigue. But if
Unless you want to learn about the kind of gangs that they have in the Bronx.
that is true. That is true. It's like a historical artifact of like I mean, we completely believe on this podcast the veracity of their research that went into developing a realistic Bronx gang of the 90s. I think that
Yeah.
the Bronx in the 90s was very much just like, yeah, it was very much just like the Warriors or Class of Nukem High or something like that. That was very much that was true. That's true. That's
Well,
that's what it
yeah,
looked like.
yeah. But with water skiing and hovercrafts.
That's true. That's true. Which is maybe why they have the skis. Maybe they also maybe they do it for water skiing,
Yeah.
rather than snow skiing. So maybe they're into that as well as they're into a variety of kind of motorsports, water sports. Like it's the kind of gang that, as much as they're bad, they're also very into to being kind of fit and healthy and but anyway, yeah, I mean, like, so what do you make of like this kind of final sequence, this kind of final variety of sequences of we get this kind of hovercraft chase uh throughout the city, and there's various beats in it that I think
Yeah.
are very fun, but I like yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, on one hand, it's never my favorite part of a Jackie Chan movie when like is it Mr. Nice Guy where there's just like a monster truck driving through? I forget, but there's you
Oh
know the
yes, that's right. That's right. They have like a specifically built set of like the mansion that Richard Norton's villain is in, and then he has like that monster truck that drives through the gates and then just drives through the house, and it just completely destroys the house. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it might be that one that they where because of an injury they came up with that as the finale instead of whatever they were going to do. Or maybe it was this one. I don't know, but that's never like the best part of a Jackie movie, but it's also just so ridiculous that you gotta enjoy it. Like I really like the joke about when they cut to that like hair metal band playing a outdoor show and
Mm-hmm.
they see and then they go hovercraft, they like point they point at it and say hovercraft, and then it turns around and it's blowing air on them, and so then they just start rocking out and it's blowing their hair around and they look all cool.
I,
And
I I love that moment. That's one of my favorite beats in the sequence as well, because like it's the way it's done as well. Like you say, it's like the drummer stops drumming, like gets up off his seat and shouts hovercraft, and then starts drumming again with hardly missing a beat. Yeah, no, that's a great moment. Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I think they're just some random band, but it reminds me of in the little part with Twisted Sister in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whoever they are, if that's a real band, then they should be they should be trying to live off of being the band that's in Rumble in the Bronx.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it is, but like, yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely.
And then we haven't mentioned that. Well, first of all, it's just a funny idea that this 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 gang that's so successful and organized and everything, they just get backed into Jackie backs them into a corner where White Tiger, this powerful kingpin, is like, I'm just going to steal a hovercraft and go on a rampage, like he's in Grand Theft Auto or something, where
That's
it's just
true.
like he's in a bad place if he's going to resort to that, I think. But anyway, then Jackie steals that guy's Lamborghini and like a giant saw and kind of jousts with the hovercraft.
I thought it was like a because that was like an antique shop, so I thought it was like a kind of antique sword that he'd stolen.
Something like that.
Yeah,
And he just sticks it out the window and drives up.
yeah,
That's
that's pretty
that's pretty
cool.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, because I like that as well because like it is the Lamborghini is being driven by this kind of very stereotypical kind of yuppie type character, and like his annoyance that his car is like stolen, and then Jackie immediately like rips the doors off of it because he drives under a truck, and that
That's right.
knocks the doors off, and then that's when he has like the sword sticking out the where the door used to be, to slice the hovercraft side. I forgot to mention that one of the best bits of bad acting in this movie is, and I don't know how much this is to do with the actor or how much this is to do with the dubbing, so I feel like I can't be too harsh on the actor. But like when Jackie is, because Jackie before the hovercraft sequence is being put undercover by the police and is given a wire, and he mentions that he wants to talk to the guy's boss, White Tiger. And then there's an excellent line reading where the guy kind of looks around and goes, "Huh, White Tiger? That's not my employer." And it's like the worst you know, like apparently this is a competent gang, but it's the worst lying I've ever seen. Um, yeah, but then, I mean, I wonder how do you feel about like how this movie ends, because like it ends very abruptly. Basically, um after he slices the hovercraft and he captures the like gang members, the three or four gang members that have been riding the hovercraft, they then, in apparently about 2 minutes, managed to repair the hovercraft with a lot of duct tape, and then Jackie and the gang, Nancy, the newly good Tony, and Elaine, all ride off to get White Tiger, and then they run over White Tiger at his golf course, and running over like removes all his clothes, and he has like it's a very kind of Looney Tunes type sequence, and he's got this like lump of grass in his mouth, and he's like, "Mm." And then we just get like a freeze frame, and then that's it.
Yeah, I kind of like it because it's kind of like acknowledging like we don't need to we don't nobody needs to know anything else. We're done. We're done here.
Yeah, no, I agree, I agree. But I remember certainly, I can't remember exactly my reaction the first time I saw it, but you know, watching it And even watching it now, it always surprised me just how abruptly it finishes.
Yeah,
Um,
it's goofy, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
It
But
should have
then,
like a freeze frame of everybody laughing, probably.
oh yes, like a Murder She Wrote episode.
Like they show it, yeah, they show his butt and then they all laugh and it freezes and then goes into the outtakes.
Yeah, and apparently the outtakes in the Jackie Chan in the Jackie Chan in the Hong Kong version, apparently the outtakes, it's like a Jackie Chan song over the outtakes, but in the version that we see, it's the song Kung Fu by the by Ash, who I think I was going to say, oh yeah, I guess they're a British band. I think they're Northern Irish, but anyway, that's the song that plays over the outtakes. But I don't know. I mean, like you say, maybe you're right. Maybe the film has said all it can say, and there's not really we don't really need an an extra sequence. So so do you still feel that like as abrupt as it is, do you still feel that that ending is satisfying?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like what I call it's not as good as this, but I call it a that'll do pig ending when it just like gets to a high point and then is just acknowledges that it's better just to end on that. And
Yeah.
another example of a better one would be uh, Marked for Death when he kills
Oh yeah.
Screwface's
Yeah.
twin, and then he says, "I hope they weren't triplets," and then he just like walks off, and it goes to the credits. It's like I love it when it's like, okay, we don't need to like now have everyone talk about what happened or anything. Now we just go to the credits. I like that.
Yeah, no, I mean like you say, I mean, I guess that there is yeah, I guess if there's no need for it, then like we can just cut to credit because I do feel like doing this podcast and rewatching a lot of these '90s action films, there is there is a lot of them. There is a lot of them, a surprising amount that all end in the same way, where either our hero or somebody our hero knows is being loaded up into the back of the ambulance, and we get like a little dialogue sequence of like, oh man, wasn't that a crazy adventure? And then we cut to credits, and like
That's true.
as much as I enjoy that trope because I've seen it so often, like it often feels unnecessary. It's like, yeah, we don't we don't need this. But
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you like it, or do you think it needs more?
um I don't I think I do like it because like the way it's done where like it I guess I enjoy it because it's so goofy. Like I think like the what I enjoy about this movie is its just general kind of goofy tone, and I guess it fits with that because like basically you get that kind of Looney Tunes thing with with the villain and him kind of with the grass in the mouth and that, and then they just like kind of um it's just the way they kind of celebrate and give like a kind of yay, and then they just freeze frame, and then it cuts to the outtakes. So yeah, no, I enjoy that, and obviously as like a Jackie Chan fan, I always look forward to the outtakes of all
Yeah,
the
of course.
insane injuries that happen on any Jackie Chan film or certainly any of Jackie Chan film of this era. Um, so yeah, no, I think it works for me. I think it works for me that kind of because it kind of uh doing this, looking back on 1994, in these episodes, it's kind of a similar thing that happens at the end of Street Fighter, where they all just kind of like jump up and do a pose, and it's just freeze frame, and then
That's
we
a good
end,
one.
which is again another good kind of abrupt freeze frame ending. So yeah, no,
I,
I enjoyed the goofiness of it.
I guess now that I think about it, it could be cool if it skipped forward a little bit and now Jackie is a member of the gang and he's like, or he could be their leader and he's dressing like them, but they also run a grocery store or something.
Yes, yes. Like, but like now they do good things, like they help old women across the road, and like maybe maybe buy shopping for people who can't get their own shopping, and stuff like that, uh yeah, they just go around doing good deeds, and Jackie's the leader. um yeah,
That'd be good.
yeah, I think that could work. Yeah. um I do like as well that everybody like immediately falls in love with Jackie in this movie. All the women in the movie immediately fall in love with them, and it's never it never seems like an issue that Nancy is. It's never kind of brought up as an issue, and maybe that's a very 90s thing, but it's never kind of brought up as an issue that Nancy is like 21 and like Jackie's like 40, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
But she's seen him in his onesie, so she's, of
Yeah.
course, she's attracted to him.
That is true. That is true. And yeah, and I guess it Jackie is one of those guys who doesn't like he doesn't look all that imposing until you see him in his onesie.
Yeah,
He's
it's
like
true.
he's one of those kind of surprising muscular guys where you're like, he doesn't look that muscular, and then he takes his top off, and you're like, he actually really is quite ripped.
That's true.
um,
Yeah, he has that kind of friendly, meek demeanor, and then if you push him too far, then you're in trouble.
that is that is true. That's kind of like my favorite thing in like Bruce Lee movies, where it's like he kind of does a kind of meek thing, and until the point where he tears his shirt off, and you're like, fuck, people are going to get fucked up now.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's
I get
always fun.
Yeah. I guess to kind of round up on this movie, like where would you say, like, overall, like, where would you say this kind of ranks in your head, in Jackie's filmography? Would this be quite high, kind of in the middle? Like, where does it place for you?
I think as far as if you're just ranking which one is the best, then it's kind of in the middle.
Hmm.
It's definitely not like in the top, but it's one of the ones that I've watched the most. So it's one of my favorites. It's just overall the variety of different things that it offers, and the goofiness of it and everything is just so fun. So I can't claim that it's one of his best, but it is one of my favorites.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I have to say, I'm in a very similar boat to you, where when I think about Jackie's films, and I think about the best entries of like Police Story, or things like Drunken Master 2, or things like that. There's a number of movies that I could probably say are of a higher quality, but I think that because this was kind of my introduction to Jackie, and like what yeah one of my main introductions to Hong Kong cinema. I think I'd seen a couple of Bruce Lee films before this, but uh yeah, this will always hold like a kind of special place in my heart. So I would say that maybe in terms of pure quality, this is not one of Jackie's finest hours, but I would say in terms of my nostalgia, in terms of like my introduction to his films, and to kind of Hong Kong martial arts cinema, I would say this ranked high amongst my favorites. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think I kind of land in a similar place, and I would certainly recommend this to. I think like it's a good. I mean, also another kind of supplementary question, because this film is slightly. Do you think this is a good entry point to Jackie's filmography? At fir- because I always used to think it was, but then on this most recent watch, I was like, it might give people a slightly wrong impression, because this film, as goofy as it is actually slightly less comedic than a lot of his films.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's true. I don't know. I think it's a good introduction though,
Hmm.
because it's just because of what we've been saying of just like it shows you like here are some like really incredible stunts. Here are some of the type of choreographed fights that he does. They're really complicated
Hmm.
and you get some of his humor a little bit. But I actually like that he's kind of more serious in it. He's not mugging that much, but he does a little bit.
Yeah, he's not. His character is more competent than a lot of his characters who are kind of muddle their way through the film or are more explicitly slapstick. I guess like maybe it's a good transitional film as well because it gives you, if you're a person who has only ever watched like American action cinema and you're not familiar with the kind of wild tonal shifts of Hong Kong cinema, then this is like a kind of good bridge of like it gives you a bit of the kind of wild tonal shifts that you might get in a Hong Kong film, but it's not so wild that you're like, what is this that I'm watching? That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then also just being at least set in North America might be more comfortable to some people if they're new to it. Even though it's not really the US, it's like, it's a combination of being Hong Kong filmmaking, but kind of trying to portray American culture.
Yeah.
But then it's way more. I like Rush Hour, but it's way more of a Jackie Chan movie than Rush Hour, and it doesn't have to have any kind of sort of degrading cultural stuff in it towards him, you know.
Yeah,
But
I know. It's a. I really liked Rush Hour when I was a kid. I guess like maybe some of the kind of like some of the racial humor and some of the kind of that stuff might not have aged that well, and I've not rewatched it in a while, so I don't know. Um, yeah, I yeah, I'm not. I'll be interested to kind of because whenever we come round to, I mean, hopefully the podcast will still be going in like 3 years' time. So, whenever we come round to kind of covering Rush Hour, it'll certainly be interesting to kind of see where it stacks up now and how much of it holds up. The bits in my head that like in terms of like the action and the stunts, I'm sure that will hold up but yeah, and I guess it's become a bit more problematic because it turns out that Brett Ratner's a terrible person. So like that's not great. But what
yeah,
can you do?
I really loved the movie Money Talks that he did before that with Chris Tucker. I think it's like
Ah,
a really,
yeah.
really funny movie. So for
Uh-huh.
a long time, when everyone hated Brett Ratner so much, I was always like the guy that defended Brett Ratner. And even X-Men 3, I
Mhm.
liked a lot. Like everyone hated that. I'm like, I thought it was pretty good. And I think it's kind of ahead of its time in the amount of goofy comic book stuff that they did in it without, unselfconsciously. So there was a period where I was like, no, he's not that bad. And so then that was such a bad, obviously there are many other more important reasons why it was terrible. But when I learned that, it just made me feel like such a bad. It's like, well, I can give up being the guy that has to defend Brett Ratner all the time.
I yeah, I guess so. I guess that's true.
Never, yeah, it's good to retire, good to be retired. But I will say that Money Talks is really funny.
Okay. Actually, Money Talk. Yeah, I've still never. I've seen. That's. I mean, I guess the Brett Ratner movies I've seen are just the Rush Hour trilogy, and yeah, like X Men Last Stand. I don't know. I've maybe seen something else, but yeah, not seen Money Talks, but yeah, okay, I might check that one out then.
If you like Chris Tucker. I think Chris Tucker is funny, and that's to me that's the best use of him in a movie in a
Okay,
comedy.
yeah. I have an up and down relationship with Chris Tucker. I feel I do like him. I like him in Friday. I like him in Rush Hour. I hate him in Fifth Element. Like it's it's an up and down relationship. I mean, what's your mileage with the his performance in Fifth Element, which is
Oh, I
what
act- I actually love it, but I know
you do?
I
Okay, cool.
yeah, I couldn't. I mean, obviously, I understand why it would be annoying to people. That's kind of the point of the character is to be obnoxious. So
I guess so. I guess so. I mean, I think like in terms of like 90s action cinema, I think that like Chris Tucker in Fifth Element and Rob Schneider in Judge Dredd are amongst the most annoying performances in an action movie in the 90s.
Well, the one thing I'll say to defend him in Fifth Element is that
Okay.
I think that this is a really the joke that like at the end they everything is kind of resolved, or maybe it's not
Uh-huh.
resolved. I forget, but he says something about like he's like every 5 minutes a bomb is going to go off or something. I'm getting out of here, and he just leaves, and then you never see him again. And that's
Not,
just a great way to get rid of one of the main characters of the movie for him just to be like, I've had enough of this, and he just leaves.
you got me there. That is a good gag. Yeah, you. That is true. That is true. That is true. Who knows? Well, when we revisit that one, who knows? I might even turn around to it, but maybe not.
I won't hold my breath on that.
No, 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 no. But yes. So I guess that's all she wrote on Rumble in the Bronx. I guess it just leaves me to say thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure to have you. I like the very first season of the show that we started like nearly 4 years ago now. Was on Steven Seagal, and your book Segalology was regularly cited on those episodes that we did. So I very much enjoyed reading your work, and it was a real pleasure to get you on the show. And I guess before like heading out, do you have anything coming up that you want to plug, or obviously plug your site and just anything that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I don't have anything super out of the ordinary going on, but just like outlawvern.com is my website, and I review
Mhm.
usually 4 movies a week,
Mhm.
and I do all kinds of movies, but action is kind of my biggest obsession. Right now, I'm doing pretty much all horror for October, um, but but yeah, check out outlawvern.com, and then also if you want a book to read, I wrote a horror action novel called Worm on a Hook, and kind of a weird crime novel called Nike Town. Um, I'm very proud of those. They're just kind of like self-published books that I did.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Great. So that's the end for this one, guys, and I hope that you will join us next month, when we are talking about a much more obscure film, as we are talking about the Die Hard knockoff No Contest next month. So join us for that one. That one you might not have heard of, and so maybe that has intrigued you to learn more about that. But until then, though, see ya.
All right.